was meeting jointly with the School Committee Facilities Subcommittee to discuss several issues. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Council Broderick.
Here.
Chairman Kennedy.
Yeah.
Council Madonza.
Here.
3 present, City Council.
Could you call the roll for the School Committee as well, please?
James Lowry.
Here.
Robert Grignac.
Here.
Christian Ross Sikowicz.
Here.
3 present on the School Committee side.
Okay. All right. It might be best to open it up with Mr. Leary, comments from Mr. Leary explaining.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor. I appreciate it. First, thank you for everybody taking the time to come out tonight so quickly. We appreciate it on the school committee side. And I know that the city side feels it's important that we look into our facilities and the future management of how we're going to go forward. The 3 agenda items tonight are really the first and the third items should be combined. It's our work order system that currently exists, as well as your city stat. I know the council has taken a motion to add the school side to the city stat, and correspondingly the school committee side has done the same, and both have approved it. So we're really anxious to incorporate our current work order system into your city stat system. In addition, we had a tour of the high school with the city manager and a large part of the Department of Public Works staff, which I want to thank all of them for taking the time to come out last week, taking a look at our high school facility. Taking a look at the floors, the HVAC, the roofs, and other areas. And the city manager asked us at that point if we could put together a school-side capital plan that we would incorporate into the city capital plan. And one of the motions that the school committee will take up tonight before the end of the subcommittee meeting is to, in fact, instruct our school committee staff to actually complete a full capital plan and turn it over to the city with a target date of the beginning of March at the city manager's request. So that's 2 items for tonight. The first item, though, it's not just the high school that we're looking at in terms of updating facilities. It's K through 8 as well. A lot of our buildings are no longer brand new buildings. They are approximately somewhere between 15 to 20 to 25 years old. We do have middle range buildings like our central office, the Rogers School, as well as 2 buildings that are 3 buildings if you count some of our, the Malloy Alternative School, over 100 years old. So updating the facilities and keeping them not only within the capital plan, but also the maintenance plan within your city stat is imperative for the city side, for the school side. At this point, what I'd like to briefly do is actually have Mr. Lang give a brief kind of overview where we are in terms of our work order program, and then combine, really get an understanding from the city when we can anticipate having the school buildings added into the city stat measurement tool. So now if Mr. Lang, if you could.
If you want, I can talk briefly about the current work order system that we use and what we're looking to in the future, and then we can have a discussion about city stat, because I don't know how we'd actually fit into that. But as far as the work order system goes, I think actually have very good communication between our maintenance department and the Department of Public Works with regard to different building maintenance needs and repairs that have to take place in the city. When I actually came on board, we originally didn't have a sophisticated system to track the requests and needs of the schools, and we came up with a built-in in-house work order system through just a FileMaker Pro database that tracks individual building needs. So someone at a school level can put a request in for a ticket. It channels up to our facilities folks. They review the ticket and can prioritize the need. Obviously, some stuff is, it's a triage, so in a heating day, even though you might have had plans to do something else, if there's a school with no heat, that takes priority, and that's just a verbal communication between the 2 departments. But our facilities folks can prioritize tickets and then forward them off. If it's something internally we take care of, we would. If it's something that goes out to a vendor that we work with, that would happen. Or the third would be if it goes to DPW to have someone perform work for us. Then it gets in the DPW queue. They prioritize it among their staff and try to address the ticket in the most expedient way they can, given staff and resources. At the end of the job, when the city closes a ticket or the job is completed, they go into the system and indicate that they think they're done. Our school custodian then at the building level who entered the ticket confirms that or reopens the ticket saying, well, part of it was done, but you need to do something else. And then ultimately all the closed tickets go closed in the system, and at the end of the year, that's the reporting we actually use for our to figure the maintenance of effort calculation on the contribution of the city towards expenditures to support schools. So we use that documentation to arrive at a value for the work that gets done, and that gets reported on our end of the year financials to the DOE. So that's the system we have in place now. Again, it's more of a homegrown, make a pro database system. We are looking citywide, not only the schools, but I think other departments, of moving to a more sophisticated work order system, possibly through Munis, so that we could actually track assets and work orders to individuals with salary tables that are already built into the system. So that'd be a little more sophisticated. We're looking at that as a possibility over the next number of months.
And just to give you a quick overview for the council and I guess for the newer school committee members as well as the public, how does our maintenance staff really work in terms of fixing and maintaining the buildings? I think a lot of understanding of what we're actually allowed to do versus what the city is responsible to do would be a good way to start off the conversation.
Basically, the school department's responsible for the day-to-day maintenance of the building, so we do the cleaning, basically. So we're responsible for cleaning the floors, changing out vents within, floor-level heating systems, things at that point. The city DPW would be responsible for plumbing, electrical, roof, HVAC, bringing different trades in to actually fix that. The building custodians basically do the daily cleaning of the buildings. Anything above and beyond that would be Department of Public Works.
Okay, and that's because the school committee are really tenants of the buildings, right? And so they would do just janitorial cleaning and things that a tenant would do, and then the other stuff would be stuff that a landlord would do, any major repairs or anything like that.
Correct.
And is there something the matter with the system now? Is there stuff that's falling through the cracks or that's not getting done, or how is that all working out?
I wouldn't say falling through the cracks. I think some of the issues just deal with how quickly, based on resources, things can get fixed in the buildings. What would take a priority over something else. I think there have been, both on the city and the school department, significant cutback in staff over the last 3 to 5 years, which affect how quickly you can perform tasks in the building.
Well, over the years, there's probably been a reduction in manpower on both sides.
Correct.
So and this is probably the result. Anything that's not getting done is probably just because there isn't the manpower to do it as quickly as what you would like. Is that what you think?
Yeah, I think either internally or even just the budget to be able to, some tasks would require an outside contractor, and the budgets just probably have been cut back over the last years to be able to support that.
If I could, I think that's one of the reasons we want to be, if my understanding of what city stat is, if I'm using the right vernacular, please correct me if I'm not, that will actually be a measurement tool in terms of how this is actually completed or not completed. And then when we go through budgeting, both the school committee side from the custodian side and the city side can look into see, as you're talking about cuts, where we're deficient in certain areas and where we need to improve and where we need to come together to work better together. So I guess that's, and if that's kind of a correct way of looking at what city stat is, I mean, I don't know if that's...
Well, actually, city stat can be used in any aspect of operations, not just work order. It's really a way, it's a tool to evaluate how you're doing, measure how you're doing, and it's perfectly applicable to this situation. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to meet Mike Herbert. He's our Lowell stat. So he runs the whole thing. He can describe very specifically how it might apply, but there are, it could apply all over to school operations. One of the things we look at is use of sick and vacation time and overtime usage. Projects, are they done on time? Are they done on budget? Opportunities for new revenue. But he can go into more detail about that.
Well, I mean, just to get into, I guess that's what really we want to look at in terms of, but we really want to see, are our work, is it being completed? Is there issues that, we need to hire certain personnel to finish a function? Do we need to look at the whole operation in terms of how we do the tenant-landlord relationship? How can we do that better? And that's really something we want to start going forward, because we do have some folks and have some real concerns in terms of how long does it take to get a broken window replaced, broken door. And I think once we can start measuring the tool and we can show what we think is real, we don't have enough staff or we need to reorganize how we do things in our relationship, we can actually have that evidence to move forward.
Thank you. Councilman Donson?
Well, to this subject, there are two separate things going on here. One is the work order system itself, which seems that we have two in place. We have one at the school department that then feeds into the one at Public Works. No? It's all one already? Okay. Well, that'll be helpful, and then, I mean, that's one of the things we want to do is remove any inefficiencies by having any duplication. So the sooner we can get it into our work order system, then the sooner that it can get done. And I think the Lowell stat part of it is when we're going to start keeping track of how long it takes from when it's entered to when it's completed, how many things are done, how long it's taking. So if things are being left undone due to lack of resources, we'll get a report on that and be able to address it, hopefully in a timely fashion, so that things that aren't getting done will be able to get done, hopefully as soon as we can get the resources applied to it.
Yes.
The, we could ask Brian and Jim to speak to that, who do the daily function of it. Within the system, if something, I'm assuming, if something came in that, let's say, was paint in a particular classroom, out of scale of how important that is over 1 to 4, that's probably initially going to be a 4. You know, it's not critical to the day-to-day operation of the school, and that if there's a broken toilet or a broken plumbing fixture, or there's a burst pipe somewhere, that's going to be a priority 1 that's going to get fixed right away. I think part of the problem, or part of the frustration from the schools, some of those tasks that are again. Not everything is this way, but I'm just using painting for one reason. Some of that stuff ends up being a 3 or 4 priority. We'd like to see it get done. It's not, say, a code violation. It's not something affecting, instruction in a classroom. But those things can, because something else comes up that's a priority 1 or 2 on any given day for a long time, those things can stay on a back burner for months or even years. And I think that's when, if we were to look at this, say, through city stat or something, as a council and committee, you would have to say, this is acceptable, this isn't acceptable. And if something is going to take 6 months or a year or 2 years to get done, either look at resource allocation, whether it be staff or a contractor to come in and do something. Those are the decisions that have to get made.
If you've got a list with 1,000 work orders on it that goes back to 2008, would it be correct that probably there's a lot of duplications, that somebody files a work order in 2008 and it never gets done, and they file it again in 2009, and so on and so on? And is it also probable that there's work orders where the work has been completed and it's just never been removed from the list? I mean, 1,000, that's a high number.
It's probably a little of everything,
Okay.
quite honestly. I think the list of open work orders is actually 1,949. So it's close to 2,000 tickets that are in some form of process. They're open or they're in progress. I would say the vast majority have not been completed. They're in varying forms of completion. There probably are some that a school got frustrated because something didn't get done and it was in the queue for so long, they re-entered the ticket. So you could have a duplicate ticket in the mix of things. There were probably also situations, though, to parallel that, where someone is frustrated that something didn't get done, and they haven't bothered even putting in the ticket because they don't know if someone's going to do it. So I think that's a pretty realistic number of probably what's out there to be done. You're going to have some duplicates, but you're also going to have some things that haven't been entered yet that probably could be.
Okay, Counselor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize if you answered this earlier, but hearing this number, since I have a couple of specific questions. What's the city's role, and maybe to Mr. Moses or Mr. Herbert, what's the city's role in this? These work orders go to the school department, and then what? How do we get them, and who controls these? How are these not being closed out, and where do they go?
Let me speak to one administrative function that I think this school committee member addressed. Part of the number of open work orders may be that we have not yet closed them out, that the work is actually done. There is typically a lag time because of resources. What we try to do at the end of the year is close as many out that are completed. So here we are in the middle of the year. There's probably more that are open but yet completed than you would see at the end of the year.
All right. When you say we, do you mean the city?
The city.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
The city closes it out. It's really a collaborative process. The work order gets into the system, and that's where Jim Green and his folks and Brian prioritize it, and Jim sends his crews out to do the work, and then our office staff in DPW closes out the work order.
Okay. And if it's determined that a number one priority and number two priority comes up, floats to the top, and a number 3 or 4, however we rank them, doesn't get done, does at some point that start to come up in rank because it's been 3 years? Or is it, it's just a matter of, look, at our resources have been scarce and we just haven't been able to get to it? I mean, if we don't have the money, we don't have the money, and I understand we've made cuts, we've laid people off, and maybe we're not painting hallways. But if it's a matter of, the system, obviously we're looking to improve the system, but I'm just trying to get my arms around, understanding how many buildings we have that where we're missing. Is it primarily the funding?
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is it's the latter. It's just the fact that the funding, the staff is not there and the funding is not there to keep up with some of those tickets. And I think you end up just getting so backlogged that you've got this mountain to try to climb out of, and we're just not at that point with existing staff and resources.
And I'm
Just for comparison's sake, I mean, last year, what we go in at the end of the year, because it's really critical to the city's chargeback on what's going to be accepted around the net school spending number. So the city does go and close the tickets. Our custodians go in and say, yes, this is a closed ticket, the job was performed properly. I believe it was about 1,750 tickets that were closed last year that were accepted as part of the chargeback. So, 1,750 tickets, work was performed, that's a significant number. But again, if you look at right now, say the open tickets, about 1,900, you got about a year's of work that you're backlogged on.
Okay. And I'm not looking to point fingers, I'm just trying to get a handle. I understand that we've cut, and things fall behind. It's a fact, but, Ms. Moses?
Well, this is where Lowell Stat could come in and help, because part of what Lowell Stat might do in this situation, I don't know how that would be configured, whether it would be Mike doing the work, whether you'd have a dedicated school Lowell Stat person, but they'd go in and take a look at the open orders and try and determine, for example, how much money it would require to complete all of them, how many hours, estimate how many hours, set up some sort of goal system where you say, okay, we know we have X amount appropriated in the DPW budget right now, and all the guys are working 100% of the time. We feel like we could knock out 25% of the backlog over the course of the year if we had, I'm throwing numbers right out of thin air, $250,000 and three more employees. So you figure, okay, you know, that takes 4 years. You set up a couple of goals. You make that a priority in the budget setting process, and you go, and then you monitor along the way. That's where Lowell Stack can help.
School Committee, Gignac?
Thank you. I don't know who's going to be able to answer this, but say there's a high priority issue, HVAC is not working in a school. Is the school provided a timeline of when that's going to be addressed? Or is it just once the ticket's in, they have to just wait?
There's no computer notification process. Like if you enter the ticket, you don't get some feedback saying this is a 3-hour or a 6-hour fix. Generally, if it's, say, an HVAC system where if it's building wide, you know, it's going to get attention that day. If it's a particular, say, a motor in a particular univent in a classroom, it's going to take possibly some time. You're going to have to go take the motor out, send it out to be fixed, have a new one come back in, if you don't have that particular a backup to swap out. Generally, just verbally, that information about how long it's going to take is conveyed when the people come to do the project, but there's no formal tracking or documentation provided to the person that puts in that ticket.
Yes.
Now, on the city side, how is that done? Is there a timeline that's given for a resolution of an issue that's been submitted?
I don't know.
It's really a question for Jim. I don't know enough about his operations to find out, to know whether he sets target dates for these work orders.
We'll get the request during the day, usually an emergency such as HVAC or something like that.
Microphone?
It's not for us.
The viewers at
People
home.
at home.
All right, so we'll start off with an HVAC call for the city side. We'll get a call, there's no heat at City Hall. Immediately, we get down to City Hall, somebody will be sent. Most of the time, it's resetting a boiler, something simple, because it's an older type system. If HVAC breaks down at the Stocklosa School, which is an entirely different comparison, we might go and find 4 or 5 different units which handle localized areas of the school, all down at one time. They could be out on the computer, where then my service person would call me, I'd call Brian, and he might call in the computer company. Or maybe it's something that it will take a reset on the roof to get 1 unit running, or it might be a boiler. Everything that we do is based on 3 factors as far as heat is concerned. If it's the whole school down, is it just a few rooms, or have we had a problem there consistently for a week's time where we've had off and on cold rooms? But the priority is always if the whole school's down, and we just go from there.
Thanks.
Okay.
Can I ask you this? You said that 1,750 got done this past year, and we have a backlog of almost 2,000. How many tickets are generated every year? Or just the average?
I honestly don't know. I could go find out.
Be 1,000? You're just not
Yeah,
sure?
I really have no idea, to be
Yeah,
honest with you.
okay. You know, because we rank the work orders, I can imagine that there would be a cracked window pane at some school that probably is at the bottom, and it probably just stays at the bottom forever and is never gonna get done because you're never gonna get to everything. And so that cracked pane, and if there's one at every school, then there's a whole bunch of them. But that stuff's, it's never gonna get done because of the way it's ranked and because of what we have in terms of resources to do that stuff. So it's, Councilor Broderick.
Excuse me, I didn't want to interrupt. I have a question, and this may be jumping to the end of this, and I'm not short-circuiting this discussion, but from the city side, you know, where I'm thinking about it is, do we have the resources to take on more with the City Stat program as it exists? What is it going to, what do we need to do anything to add, and what will it cost? If you can answer, I don't know if you know this yet, depending on what, you know, we take on here.
Well, there are a couple of different components in the answer to that question. First of all would be the actual work order system itself. As Tom has articulated, CityStat is not necessarily a tool. A common misconception is that it's a computer program. That's not the case. It's more of a management philosophy. that's really kind of has four tenets to it, and one of that being accurate and timely data. The current work order system we have now, which was created, I believe, back in 2008, was built according to the staffing levels that we had at the current time, and also the staffing technological capabilities at the time. And as you know, people have already spoke about, as those resources have decreased, the usefulness of this database in tracking and you know, determining the status of work orders has kind of fallen. What we are looking at doing is looking at getting a new work order system which would give us much more accurate and timely data. And that would require an initial outlay of resources to input that data and do kind of the front loading that's necessary that would enable us to generate reports that we can then use from a management perspective. In terms of having another, an analyst or a staff person, you know, we could have that through the Lowell Stat program if that was deemed the way to go, or we could have somebody within DPW who has, I would say, more technological capabilities, could also do some of this work as well. So that's where we stand in terms of what we would need in terms of resources.
I guess the bottom line, as far as the maintenance part of it, I want to get into the capital plan in a second, but we want to make sure that we're having a measurement tool to ensure we're doing the best we can to get projects completed, and making budget decisions to support that. So at least we're cognizant of the fact that we need to do, you know, add certain amount of staff or resources to complete tasks. Because we do get a lot of calls from folks, whether it be in the schools, whether it be parents about issues, and not just cracked windows, but other issues. And we know folks, we know I've talked to Mr. Green, your folks are working all out. We're not disputing that, just a question of we're not keeping up with it. And what we need to do on our end is take these 1,900 work orders and make sure we have one work order, not, you know, a repeat performance, if you will, or rework order, and make sure we have that analysis. So when we do sit down to give you that information, it's not 1,900 pieces of work that are outstanding. I mean, that's something we should be going through to make sure that we're taking care of issues on a one-time basis. Then we should be renewing it on our own side internally with the school principal, saying what work orders are not done at the end of the month, so we can have that intelligent dialogue with your folks saying we have, you know, X amount of doors that are broken in, you know, whatever school, et cetera. I don't know, before we get to the capital plan, I don't know if anybody else has anything
I
else
think
they want to
Mr.
say.
Conway has, and then the mayor, and then Councilor Mendonça has something to say. So we'll start with Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The high school is coming up with accreditation in the next year or so, and it's every 10 years of accreditation. The last accreditation, there were approximately 80 to 90 issues that and recommendations that came out of that. And one of the problems that was very evident is when they talked to the staff was rather upset because of the fact that it took so long to get things done. And there was a constant situation where people would put in these orders, request to have something done, and nothing took place. I have spent many years down in the high school myself, and I know that when I left, there was a heating problem. And there's still a heating problem. And when I'm listening to, does anything fall in between the cracks, that certainly has fallen through the cracks. And I'm wondering that, you know, when I listen to an administrator that says, well, it's wintertime and let the kids put hats and gloves on, as far as I'm concerned, that is not a satisfactory answer. I think that it's something that has to be addressed, and I realize that it's costly, and I also realize the fact that when we discuss these things, it's a constant, we don't have the parts, it's an antiquated system, what can we do with it? And this is an answer that's given This is an answer that is given year after year after year. So you can understand the frustration that takes place. What do we do with this, and where does this fit on that list of priorities? Because I know that I have gone into that building, like my colleagues have gone into that building, and we have certainly experienced some very, very cold areas. What do we do about that? We cannot continue in the direction that we're going. There needs to be some type of plan put into place. What would be the recommendation? Thank you.
Go ahead.
I think we would all agree that, yes, that is not a good answer, putting on hats and gloves. I think my first question when posed with that problem would be, is this the same heating issue that's happening over and over again, or is it a different heating issue each time? Meaning, is the same boiler breaking down? Are we going out and fixing it every week? And this is where a tool like Lowell Stat and CityStat would come into place, because if you do look at something that's being fixed over and over again, well, maybe it would be prudent to just replace that piece. We're trying to get to a point now where we can collect that data and look at it in that way to see if maybe it would be prudent to go ahead and replace that boiler, as opposed to going out and sending guys constantly to fix the same thing over and over again. I mean, our guys in our Lands and Buildings Department are doing, I think, a very good job with what they have in terms of resources and getting things fixed, as fast as they can. I'm not saying that more could not be done, but again, it is a resource issue. But again, this is where I think our STAT program could help us determine what is the best allocation of those resources.
Well, could we get somebody over there to take a look at that unit? I mean, it's my understanding that there are a number of units that are on top of the building. I don't know, there's 6 or 8 type of units. And again, it becomes a shell game. There's always some down, there's a problem over here, we're gonna see what we can do. We've got to call in, we're waiting for parts. But in the meantime, we still have staff members and students year after year after year that are experiencing cold areas in those buildings. So, I mean, we can sit around and try to discuss these things, but I think the bottom line is we need a plan. That's what we need. We need to figure out, what are we going to do? What's step 1, 2, 3, 4? I know that whoever is involved with this needs to sit down with the appropriate individuals and to present a plan on how it's going to be fixed once and for all. Thank you.
Okay, we have Mayor Murphy. Mayor Murphy, and then Councilor Broderick, and then Mr. Gignac, and then Mr. Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the first step is really getting a better set of data, really. Clearly, the 2,000 or so work orders that were listed here isn't enough information. It doesn't speak to whether or not this is a question of requiring a capital investment so that we're not returning again and again, or whether this is really a question of staffing. So it's getting a better set of data so we can take a step back and actually understand what the problems are. So that goes, I think, to the current system. It goes to a question of when the data is actually entered. It seemed, through Mr. Lang's comments, it seems to be entered towards the end as we're trying to develop what the actual numbers are for the net school spending. But we need to do that, as Mr. Herbert suggested, more real time, so that we can figure out, not just the level of staffing, but the kinds of staffing needed. If we're returning again and again for the wait times to be able to address a roofing problem is longer and longer, then clearly we need to add more staffing to our roofing department. Or if it tends to be plumbing, then we'll be able to find that, because the data is there for us to search through. And we'll be able to understand better, again, the number of staffing and tie that into the capital equipment. You know, you'll be able to see, I think, very clearly that, you know, the age of our capital equipment throughout the schools is such that they're going to require replacement fairly soon. But you'll also be able to see how maintenance efforts could be better applied with more staffing to be able to extend the life of those various capital needs. But it all returns, I think, to the quality of data that we have to be able to then make the decisions required and really determine the priority. As Councilor Broderick suggested, you know, if an issue is left unaddressed for 3 or 4 years, then clearly that ought to at least be bumped up somewhat in priority. And we ought to have some kind of system that encourages that. Thank you.
Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. Before I get into my final comments, quick question. Was the Lowell High School boiler heating system looked at by Amoresco?
I'd like to answer that because several years ago, the school committee, I believe, hired a company called RDK to do an extensive analysis of all the schools. That's all they did was schools. They put together a report that was 4 volumes, probably this thick. We used that as a basis to come up with some of the projects that are in the current capital plan. We are working with the school administration to try and get the school to tell us which of those projects are a priority. And there were cost estimates in that program. That's a tool that, Mr. Conway, that the school committee should probably resurrect, take a look at the report that RDK gave you and set some priorities and let us know what you want done. Because it sounds like the high school system is not something that that our craftsmen are going to be able to solve. If that's been a problem for years and years and years, it's just like your home system. At some point, you know, it may take replacing, and you have that report, that analysis on that. So you should resurrect that.
Okay. Before I get sidetracked here, maybe just like 4 or 5 things here. I think we probably need to establish some timetables here and maybe some action items and to be able to move on, because I know we all have our own priorities and what might need to be done, and you know, but I think probably ought to try and determine how long it will take to get the current work order system filtered, which I assume would be a school department side issue or work piece, and then from the city side, Mr. Herbert, you know, through the manager, whoever, I know for me, as a city councilor, I'd like to know what is the cost of software, what are we looking at to improve this system, integrate it with the city, probably improve the city's system as well. I assume that's a piece of it. What would be the cost of the software? How long would it take to get it up and running? And then, I guess, 2 things go, maybe for our purposes here of a joint meeting, the next steps would be, but assuming that the city council passes, you know, if we need to appropriate money and so on to do that, I think that's a separate issue. But and then for our purposes here to move forward and try and merge the 2 systems, the work order systems, it would be to take that new work order data and then prioritize it if it needs to be reprioritized, or some, you know, which will require, I assume, the city and the school sitting down, working together, maybe come up with some plan as to how it can be done, cost estimates, things that have been sitting for, you know, for how long, safety issues and so on, but coming up with some prioritized list or for these work orders in a new system that we can now start implementing, hopefully, and I don't know if this is possible, but to be implemented into the FY13 budget that we'll be dealing with in you know, 3 or 4 months. I don't know if that's enough time, but that's how I would potentially see the steps to try and get this integrated and up and running. It may be very, very aggressive. Mr. Herbert, I know you're a one-man band there, but, you know, I'd like some feedback as to what we can do to, if it is going to be much more successful and make a difference, then, you know, what are the costs? Can we get it done, and can we get it done for this year, for the, you know, for the next budget? And I think that's, you know, that's all I have to add, and hopefully we can. Thank you.
Councilman Donson?
Yeah, well, I agree. It seems like a two-pronged effort. We have to deal with process and how to make it more efficient and effective. At the same time, we have this backlog that we must deal with somehow. One of the things I wanted to ask is, obviously, the school committee people have access to a list of what's in that backlog. I was wondering if that could be provided to the city council, especially those things that were in the system and have not been closed prior to July 1st. So they were entered in last fiscal year before, still haven't been done. Be good to have some kind of priority on those, what it started out as or what it is now. And if there's anything that could be broken out as this was a work order to be repaired, but it's really a capital item now. I mean, it could have been an HVAC system where they keep changing the filter. That doesn't fix it. There's something much more serious, and it's going to be a capital item to get it replaced. So if we could get that information, I think it would be helpful in dealing with the backlog. And going forward, we'll be dealing with the process as well.
Mr. Gignac?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing I would like to see both the school administration and the city side look at when we look at a new work order system or how to make it more effective is how we rank the severity of the issues. I understand the rationale on how we currently rank them, but there are some issues that just this school year itself came to me that were safety issues that took months to address. Now, I'm thinking safety issues would be at the top of that list and category 1. However, I don't know that that was the case. I would just suggest when we look at how to improve the system and how to analyze the data, that we take a look at how we're ranking the issues so the severe issues can be addressed immediately. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leary?
Just quickly, I think what Mr. Broderick, Councilor Broderick said, I think is exactly the route we need to go and expeditiously. But for some housekeeping areas that we need to take care of tonight, what the school committee needs to do is I need to entertain a motion to instruct our school administration to put together a capital plan at the beginning of March for the city side. So if I can entertain a motion for Mr. Gignac and second by Ms. Rosikowicz. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. You don't need a roll call for that, do you, Jay? Okay. So we had a motion to pass to go to the school committee tonight to instruct our folks to provide a capital plan, which will incorporate the data that you articulated earlier about the HVAC information. Go ahead.
Excuse me, just besides providing a capital plan, would you also be able to clean up that list?
Yeah.
So that,
Absolutely.
all right, and provide the list to the subcommittee at some point in the future so we can see exactly what's on there and what makes, is that like how long will that take to do that?
No, you provided it to the school committee already. It's an email, it's electronic, we can just forward it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think what we want to do is remove duplicates. We don't want to have duplicate information. We like to see
A clean list.
a clean list, yeah, because it's not, if there's really, 500 items, let's get the 500 items as opposed to 1,900.
Yeah, we can do that. That's going to be a two-part process because we'll have the schools go back and just double-check and make sure they haven't double-entered tickets. And DPW will need to go in and close out any tickets that they feel have been resolved so that they can be formally closed.
So how long will that take to have that? Is that 2 weeks or is that a week or 3 weeks?
Yeah, on my side, I could do it within 2 weeks. I don't know how the backlog is at DPW, so we'd have to talk to them about that.
Okay, but DPW can probably do it within, if they can do it in 2 weeks, we can probably do it in 13 days, right? I think that? About
If
2
you
or
get
3
outside
weeks.
help like your snowshoe race, the dog sled race, you can, yeah. And I guess at this point, I'd like to take a motion to suspend the rules.
Suspend the rules.
Yep.
All in favor? All opposed?
Thanks a lot, I appreciate that. Good evening. My name is Rick Underwood. I live at 45 Buttman Road. I've worked for the city of Lowell now for almost a little over 20 years. There's a lot of smart people in this room, I'm sure smarter than I am, but one thing I can tell you is this isn't a work order problem. Our work orders are updated and constantly. We've spoken to people about things, so it's not a work order issue. These problems that we have, my particular problem at the Sullivan School was a hot water issue, an HVAC issue, and other things. It's quite simple. It's a boots-on-the-ground issue. The DPW isn't going to be able to address every issue we have in a timely manner because there's just too many of them and not enough of them. The first time in a long time I've read in the paper we have a $3 million surplus here in the city in a year of record low snowfall, so I'm sure there's going to be more savings next year. We had talked about years ago, when I say we, school department members, of having our own maintenance program years ago. And then they said, well, there'd be no money for that because we'd have to have some place to locate supplies, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you should look at that again. I mean, we could use an HVAC person designated just for the school because the DPW can't run down here every time we have an issue. They can't run down every time somebody marks up the wall for a hole in the wall. It's impossible. It ain't going to happen. If we had somebody designated for our schools, carpenter, HVAC, maybe even a plumber, that's the only way things are going to get done on a timely matter, because you can't expect the city to come run down here to each and every school every time there's a problem. But to say it's a work order issue, it's not, because we update them all the time. We talk from this level to that level to this level. So at my particular school, everybody knew what was going on at my school. It went on for a year and a half. We didn't have hot water there for a long time. I own property in the city. Not too long ago, a quick story, I know we're all cut for time. February 29th, I got somebody moving in March 1st. I'm running around trying to get my everything in order, get my occupancy permits. Plumber inspector come in, checks my hot water in my sink. It wasn't 120 degrees. It was a little too hot in the kitchen, and what was it? Too hot in the kitchen, too hot in the bathroom. They failed me. If the school had a health code, a health inspection at our schools, they wouldn't open. We didn't have hot water there for a year and a half. We have bathrooms that have no ventilation. I can't rent an apartment with no ventilation in a bathroom with no window. These are issues that have to be addressed on a timely matter, but you can't expect them to do it because there's just not enough time there. We need to look at that $3.5 million that's in surplus and see if there's something we can do for the school with our own money. I know the city doesn't have it, so maybe we can look at that again, because it just something has to be looked at. 1,900 work orders, they're accurate. They're updated, they're all in there, and you can't point fingers because it's just, you can't say, oh, it's DPW's fault or it's lands and buildings. They can't keep up with it. There's no way they're gonna. We have to go somewhere else. We have to start looking outside the box. And I don't even know if it's feasible. I thought maybe I own a company, a construction company. Tax credits for work done outside. I don't know if that's feasible, but I mean, everyone's looking for tax write-offs. Like I said, that's just one opinion, one thing. We need somebody in our schools that are gonna work for us all the time. And, I've had Jimmy Green come by my school with 4 carpenters at one time, 6, 7 work orders in hand. Day comes, they go, they can't come back the next day, they got other things to do. That's the way it works, and it's gonna be like that until we get more boots on the ground. That's the only answer. Thanks a lot, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they want to say? What might be helpful is if we do this. It might be good if we could just recess this meeting, meet in 1 month, and at that time, the school department would have their capital plan in place. Is that correct?
Yeah, on the capital plan, what we're going to do is go through the existing capital plan that the city has, because a lot of our projects are already in there. And we're going to work probably through subcommittee to prioritize some of those needs. And we're going to be able to do that within a couple of weeks so that we can get to the city manager a prioritized list of what's already in the capital plan. Okay. Then we'll work over the course of the springtime to look at other projects that aren't incorporated into that plan as it stands. We'll continue working with the city administration to have those be incorporated into subsequent versions of the plan.
Okay. Well, I mean, as we approach the budget, the budget time, it seems like it would be a good idea if we can have this in place and also have an updated and cleaned list of all of the the work orders that are in there. And I guess probably what Mr. Moses was talking about, that report that was done would probably help to estimate what the cost would be for some of those. So if we could put that together, then maybe we could, going forward, as the mayor said earlier, we'll have a lot more information, and maybe we can do something and have a plan of action for, you know, that we're ready to do in the next fiscal year, and that we can fund in the upcoming budget. I mean, that's a possibility if we want to do that. I know that the school department has been working closely with the city on these issues, but obviously there's some concern and frustration about how quickly stuff's getting done. And I can imagine if I was a member of the school committee and I had people calling me up, parents or so forth, about different things that were wrong at the different schools, and you can never get a solution to those. That becomes a frustrating situation for anybody on the city council or the school committee. So does that sound reasonable, or do you have?
No, that sounds good. I appreciate you guys taking the time and working with us to achieve that. I think as long as we're taking the action steps and doing it, I think it'll be fine.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add? All right, so we'll recess the meeting for 4 weeks and meet, okay, maybe a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday. We'll see. All right, the meeting stands. The subcommittee was, we have a motion to recess by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Mr. Leary. All in favor, all opposed? Meeting's recessed for 4 weeks.